It was a chilly autumn morning when Evan Parker found himself running behind schedule. His old sedan chugged along the uneven roads of their small town, with 8-year-old Emma in the back seat, humming a tune. Her frizzy brown hair was tied in pigtails, and her backpack, a little too large for her small frame, was perched beside her. She munched on a slightly squashed peanut butter sandwich, a rushed breakfast Evan had managed to throw together amidst their hectic morning routine. Evan glanced in the rearview mirror, his heart swelling at the sight of her. "You ready for your big math test today, kiddo?" he asked, trying to keep the mood light. Emma nodded confidently. "Yep, Mrs. Cruz says I'm really good at fractions." "Well, I can barely figure out the bills, so you're already ahead of me," Evan joked, though the reality of his financial struggles weighed heavily on his mind. Between part-time shifts at the diner and sporadic odd jobs, money was always tight. The radiator in their apartment needed fixing, Emma's sneakers had holes in them, and the car was one mishap away from giving up entirely. As they approached the main road, Evan noticed a black sedan pulled over on the shoulder. The car's hazard lights blinked steadily, and a woman stood nearby, pacing back and forth with her phone pressed to her ear. Something about her rigid, uncertain posture made Evan slow down. "Daddy, what's wrong with her car?" Emma asked, leaning forward to peer out the window. "Flat tire, looks like," Evan replied, his voice tinged with hesitation. He checked the time. If he stopped to help, he'd be late for his shift at the diner. But leaving someone stranded didn't sit right with him. He pulled over. "Stay here for a bit, okay, Em? I'll be right back." Emma nodded and watched as her dad grabbed a rusted old toolbox from the trunk and approached the stranded woman. "Hi there," Evan called out, his breath forming small puffs in the cold air. "Need some help?" The woman looked up, startled. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored navy coat and polished leather boots dusted with gravel. Her phone was tightly gripped in one hand. "Oh yes, please," she said, visibly relieved. "I've been trying to reach roadside assistance, but they're backed up for hours." Evan smiled easily. "Well, you're in luck. I'm not roadside assistance, but I know my way around a flat tire." "I'm Claire," she said, shaking his hand. "Thank you. I don't even know where to start with this." "No problem," Evan said. "This isn't my first roadside rescue." Claire smiled, but there was a trace of unease in her expression. She wasn't used to relying on strangers. As Evan crouched to inspect the tire, he asked, "Do you have a spare?" Claire gestured vaguely toward the trunk. "I think so, but I wouldn't even know how to get it out." "No problem," Evan said, heading to the back of the car. He opened the trunk to reveal a neatly packed spare tire and tools that looked untouched. As he started sorting through them, Emma climbed out of their car, curiosity getting the better of her. "Emma, what are you doing out here?" Evan called out, more amused than scolding. "I want to help," Emma declared, trotting over to stand beside Claire. "Hi, I'm Emma. My dad's really good at fixing stuff." Claire smiled down at her. "Hi, Emma. You've got a very kind dad." Evan chuckled, loosening the lug nuts. "You hear that, kiddo? Kind. Remember that next time I ask you to clean your room." Emma giggled and Claire seemed to relax, the banter easing some of her tension. However, changing the tire proved trickier than Evan had anticipated. The lug nuts were stubbornly tight, and the jack didn't fit quite right under the car's frame. "Dad, do you need my super strength?" Emma asked, flexing her skinny arms dramatically. "I might," Evan replied with a grin, though sweat was starting to bead on his forehead. "This one's being a bit of a pain." Claire stepped closer, clearly feeling guilty for standing by idly. "Is there anything I can do to help?" Evan handed her a small flashlight. "Hold this steady for me," he suggested. "Emma, keep an eye on the road, okay?" Together, they worked in quiet coordination, the crisp air filled with the faint sounds of passing cars and the occasional commentary from Emma about birds she spotted nearby. Despite the unexpected difficulty, Evan's steady determination never wavered. "Almost there," he muttered, finally loosening the last lug nut and pulling off the flat tire. As he began aligning the spare, Claire's expression softened. She wasn't used to such selfless help, especially from someone who seemed to have his own struggles. "I can't believe you're doing all this," she said quietly. "You've saved my day." Evan shrugged without looking up. "Just doing what I'd hoped someone would do for me if I were in your shoes." Claire's gaze lingered on him, thoughtful and almost admiring. The spare tire clicked into place, and Evan tightened the bolt securely. "All done," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "This should hold you until you can get it properly replaced." Claire exhaled a long breath, her shoulders relaxing. "You have no idea how much I appreciate this." Evan waved off her thanks with a lopsided smile. "It's nothing. Just glad I could help." He glanced over at Emma, who was crouched by the roadside, poking at a shiny rock she'd found. "You ready, kiddo?" Emma bounded up, clutching her new treasure. "I'm ready, but Daddy, can we keep the rock? It's so sparkly." "We'll talk about it," Evan said, ruffling her hair as she climbed back into the car. Claire stepped forward, hesitating. "I'd really like to give you something for your time. Let me at least cover lunch for you and your daughter." Evan shook his head firmly. "That's kind of you, but I didn't stop for a reward, just paying it forward." Claire looked at him, her brow furrowed in a mix of confusion and admiration. "I'm not used to meeting people like you," she said, pulling out a sleek leather notebook. "Can I at least have your number? I'd feel better knowing I have a way to thank you properly. Someday." Evan hesitated for a moment, then reached into his pocket for a scrap of paper, scribbling his number on it and handing it to her. "If you ever need help and I'm nearby, give me a call." Claire tucked the paper into her bag with a soft, genuine smile. "I will, and thank you again, Evan." As Evan got back into the car, Emma looked over at him, curious. "Why didn't you let her pay us, Daddy? We could have gotten hot chocolate." Evan glanced in the rearview mirror, meeting her wide eyes. "Because sometimes people need kindness, not money. And it's nice to help someone just because you can." Emma tilted her head, thinking it over. "So you helped her just like superheroes help people?" Evan laughed, his heart tugging. "Something like that. But superheroes wear capes, and your dad wears old work boots." "Boots are cooler anyway," Emma declared, satisfied with her conclusion. The rest of the drive to Emma's school passed uneventfully, but Evan couldn't shake the interaction from his mind. There was something about Claire, her polished appearance, her quiet gratitude that lingered with him. She'd been kind, yes, but there was also something unspoken in her expression, a mix of gratitude and thoughtfulness that he couldn't quite place. Meanwhile, Claire sat in her car for a moment before starting the engine. Her schedule was packed, her phone already buzzing with notifications about the meeting she was late for, but she couldn't bring herself to care. Instead, she stared at the crumpled paper with Evan's number on it, replaying his easygoing smile and the way he'd effortlessly turned down her offer to pay. It wasn't just that he had helped her, it was the way he did it, with patience, humor, and a quiet humility she rarely encountered in her fast-paced world. Most of the people she worked with wouldn't have thought twice about taking her money, but Evan had been different, genuine. She tucked the paper back into her bag, a small smile tugging at her lips. There was something about him and his bright, chatty daughter that felt unexpectedly refreshing. For the first time in a long time, she found herself thinking about more than just her next deadline or business deal. As she drove away, she resolved to keep Evan's number. She didn't know how or when, but she had a feeling she'd be needing it again. Weeks passed, and life for Evan continued in its usual blur of work, bills, and parenting. But one Tuesday evening, after he had tucked Emma into bed and was settling down with a lukewarm cup of coffee, his phone buzzed. The number was unfamiliar, but something about it seemed familiar. Hesitating only for a moment, he answered. "Hello, this is Evan." "Hi, Evan, it's Claire. The woman you helped with her flat tire a few weeks ago." Evan straightened, surprised. "Oh, hi, Claire. Everything okay? Did the spare hold up?" "It did," she replied warmly. "Thanks to you, but that's not why I'm calling. I hope I'm not interrupting." "Not at all," Evan said, a bit confused. "What's going on?" "Well," Claire began, her voice tinged with nervousness. "I've been meaning to call you. You gave me your number, and I wanted to make sure I didn't lose it, because I wanted to thank you properly. You went out of your way that day, and I didn't do enough to show my appreciation." Evan smiled faintly. "Claire, really, there's no need for that. I'm just glad I could help." "But there is a need," Claire insisted gently. "I've been thinking about that morning a lot. You barely knew me, yet you stopped everything to help. Most people wouldn't have. And I'm in a position where I can pay that kindness forward. but I'd like to do it by helping you." Evan blinked, unsure of what to say. "I appreciate the thought, but I'm not sure what I could offer someone like you. I'm just doing my best to get by." "That's exactly it," Claire replied. "You're doing your best and it shows. Look, I won't take up more of your time on the phone, but I'd like to meet with you. I have an opportunity that could make things a little easier for you." "An opportunity?" Evan repeated, cautious but curious. "Yes," Claire said. "Let me explain. I didn't mention this when we met, but I run a company. Well, several, actually. It's a long story, but the point is, I'm in a position to help others when I see the chance. And I see that chance with you. You're clearly hardworking and resourceful, and I think those qualities are rare." Evan was quiet for a moment, processing her words. "Claire, I appreciate that, but I'm not sure what I can offer someone like you." Claire smiled. "Just hear me out. I think I have something that could change things for you." Claire's tone was both gentle and firm as she spoke. "You mentioned that you've done handyman work, right? You've clearly got mechanical skills, and I know you're reliable. One of my smaller businesses manages rental properties, and we need someone who can handle maintenance and repairs. It's not glamorous, but it's steady work, and it comes with benefits." Evan was stunned. "Claire, I don't even know what to say. That's incredible. But are you sure about this?" She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. "This is also for you. Call it a signing bonus, or just a small thank you for what you did that day." Evan opened the envelope hesitantly. Inside was a check for $10,000. His breath caught in his throat. "Claire, I can't take this." "Yes, you can," she said firmly. "Think of it as an investment in someone who deserves a break. You gave me your time and kindness without expecting anything in return. Let me do the same for you." Evan sat back, his mind reeling. This wasn't just an opportunity, it was a lifeline. He couldn't bring himself to slide the check back toward Claire, but accepting it felt just as impossible. The weight of her offer, combined with the mention of steady work, left him overwhelmed. "Claire," he said finally, his voice low but steady, "I don't even know what to say. No one's ever done something like this for me before." "You don't need to say anything," Claire replied, her expression warm and sincere. "Just consider it. I know it's a lot to take in, but I'm not offering charity. I'm offering an opportunity to someone I believe can succeed." Evan nodded slowly, his thoughts racing. "It's not that I don't appreciate it. I do, more than I can say. But I'm not sure I'm qualified. I've never managed properties before, and my experience is mostly odd jobs. What if I mess this up?" "You won't," Claire said confidently. "I can tell you're the kind of person who shows up and does the work, no matter how hard it gets. That's all the qualification I need. Plus, I'll make sure you have training and support." Evan glanced out the window, watching a couple stroll by with their dog. He thought of Emma's cheerful face and her growing list of needs, things he couldn't always provide. He thought of the bills piling up at home, of the late-night stress after long shifts at the diner. For the first time in years, there was a sliver of hope in front of him, but it came wrapped in uncertainty. "I'll give it a try," he said at last, his voice quiet but resolute. "I don't know if I'll succeed, but I'll give it everything I've got." Claire smiled, relief and satisfaction evident in her expression. "That's all I could ask for. Thank you, Evan." They spent the next hour talking through the details. The job would start in 2 weeks, giving Evan time to wrap up his shifts at the diner and prepare for the new role. Claire explained that the properties were all within a reasonable driving distance, and the position came with health benefits, something Evan hadn't had in years. By the time they parted ways, Evan felt cautious optimism brewing in his chest. He didn't fully trust that life could turn around so easily, but he decided to hold on to the possibility. That evening, as he and Emma sat together at their tiny kitchen table, working on her homework, Evan felt a quiet sense of determination. "Guess what, kiddo?" he said with a smile. "Your dad's got a new job." Emma's eyes widened with excitement. "Really? What kind of job?" "A better one," he replied. "Something that'll help us out a lot." "Does that mean we can get pizza on Fridays again?" she asked, her face lighting up. Evan laughed, ruffling her hair. "Yeah, kiddo, I think it does." 2 weeks later, Evan began his new job. The first few days were a whirlwind of learning, fixing leaky faucets, patching drywall, and handling tenant complaints. There were moments of doubt when he felt out of his depth, but every time he thought about giving up, he remembered Claire's faith in him and Emma's hopeful smile. Claire checked in regularly, always offering the same calm reassurance. "How's it going?" she asked during one of her visits to the property. "Better than I expected," Evan admitted, wiping his hands after installing a new light fixture. "It's hard work, but it feels good to be doing something that matters." "You're doing great," she said. "The tenants have already mentioned how responsive you've been." For the first time in years, Evan felt a sense of pride in his work. His income was steady, the benefits eased his constant worry, and he was even starting to save a little. The $10,000 check had allowed him to catch up on bills, fix the radiator in their apartment, and buy Emma new sneakers and art supplies. They even splurged on a small trip to the zoo, something Emma still talked about every night at dinner. One evening, as he finished repairing a tenant's stove, his phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Just wanted to say you're making a bigger impact than you realize. Proud of you." Evan smiled, his chest tightening with gratitude. He didn't know how to respond, but he knew one thing for certain. Claire had changed his life. More than that, she had given him a chance to believe in himself again. As he packed up his tools and headed home, he thought of the day he'd stopped to help her on the side of the road. It had seemed like a small act of kindness at the time, but it had sparked something far greater, a turning point he hadn't seen coming. And for the first time in years, the future didn't feel so daunting. It felt full of possibility. Months passed, and Evan's life continued to evolve in ways he never expected. The job Claire had offered him became more than just work. It was a foundation for something greater. With each passing day, he grew more confident in his skills and took pride in providing a stable life for Emma. It wasn't always easy. There were days when a broken water heater or a midnight emergency call left him bone-tired. But every time he felt worn down, he remembered what had brought him here. A single moment of kindness on a chilly autumn morning. One afternoon, as Evan finished painting the walls of a newly vacated unit, his phone buzzed again. It was Claire. This time, though, she wasn't checking in about work. "Can you meet me for coffee this weekend? I have an idea I'd like to run by you," she texted. Curious but not surprised, Evan agreed. On Saturday morning, they met at the same cafe where Claire had first presented him with the job opportunity. After the usual greeting, Claire's tone grew more serious. "I've been so impressed by your work, Evan," she said. "You've not only taken on every challenge, but you've also brought a level of care and dedication that's rare. The tenants have noticed, and so have I." Evan felt his cheeks flush slightly. "I'm just doing my job." "Special it is," Claire insisted, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "And it got me thinking, what if you could do more? Not just as an employee, but as a partner?" Evan blinked, taken aback. "A partner?" Claire nodded. "Yes, I've been considering expanding the property management side of my business, maybe even acquiring more units. But I can't do it alone. I need someone I can trust, someone who knows the work inside and out and understands the importance of treating people with respect. That's someone Evan is." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Evan struggled to find a response. "I don't know what to say. I'm just starting to feel like I've got a handle on the work I'm doing now. Being a partner is a whole other level." "I know it's a big step," Claire said, her voice steady, "but you've proven yourself more than capable. If it's the money you're worried about, we can work out an arrangement. This is an opportunity to build something, not just for me, but for you and Emma too." Evan stared into his coffee, her words sinking in. A partner. It was a role he never imagined for himself, not after years of struggling to make ends meet. But the more he thought about it, the more the idea ignited something inside him. Hope, ambition, and a sense of possibility. "I'll think about it," he said finally. "That's all I'm asking," Claire replied, her smile returning. Over the next few weeks, Evan couldn't stop thinking about Claire's proposal. He talked it over with Emma, explaining that it might mean even more changes for their little family. "Would it mean we could get a bigger place someday?" Emma asked, eyes wide with curiosity. "Maybe," Evan said, ruffling her hair. "But it also means I'll be busier for a little while." Emma thought about it for a moment, then grinned. "I think you should do it, Daddy. You always say we should be brave and try new things." Evan laughed softly, amazed at how wise his daughter could be. With Emma's blessing and a growing sense of determination, Evan called Claire and gave her his answer, "I'm in." From that day forward, Evan's life continued to transform. Partnering with Claire brought its own challenges, but it also opened doors he never thought possible. He learned how to manage budgets, negotiate contracts, and lead a small team. The work was demanding, but deeply fulfilling. Years later, as he walked Emma to the bus stop, she asked, "Do you think you would have met Miss Claire if her car didn't break down?" Evan smiled, looking down at her. "Probably not. Funny how life works sometimes, isn't it?" Emma nodded thoughtfully. "It's like you always say, one kind thing can change everything." Evan squeezed her hand, his heart full. "You're absolutely right, kiddo." As the bus pulled away, Evan stood on the sidewalk, watching it disappear around the corner. He thought back to that cold autumn morning, to the flat tire that had set everything in motion. It was a reminder that even in the toughest times, a single act of kindness could ripple outward, transforming lives in ways no one could predict. And in that moment, Evan felt something he hadn't felt in years: complete contentment.